It began with a simple, everyday moment that turned into a nightmare. A little girl was happily pedaling her bicycle around her home on a summer day. Her mother, who had been inside making lunch, stepped out to check on her. But the yard was silent and empty. The girl was gone. She had disappeared completely, as if she had been swallowed by the air itself, leaving not a single clue behind. 12 long years would pass. Then, a team of workers updating a local property began to break up the concrete floor of the garage. As they dug, they found something hidden deep below the surface. It was a shocking discovery, one that would rip open old wounds and force a quiet town to confront a past it had tried to forget. Cedarbrook Hollow was never the sort of town where bad things happened, especially not to children. Tucked away in the lush forests of the Pacific Northwest, it was a community known for its peace and quiet, and for the way everyone looked out for one another. The town was beautiful in a quiet, mysterious way, especially on misty mornings when a soft fog would drift through the winding, tree-covered streets, making everything look like a dream. Over the last 10 years, the town had changed a little. Some new houses had been built on its outskirts, and the popularity of Airbnb rentals meant more strangers were coming to enjoy the quiet woods. The rise of remote work had made Cedarbrook Hollow a perfect temporary escape for people from the city wanting a taste of a calmer life. On a particular afternoon in late May, Clara Forrester drove into her driveway at exactly 3:17 p.m., the same time she did almost every weekday. At 40 years old, her honey blonde hair was now streaked with strands of silver that she had decided to stop fighting. The lines that framed her eyes had grown deeper over time, each one a mark of a sorrow that no mother should ever have to carry. She turned off the engine of her old car and collected her things, her box of pastry tools and her work uniform. Clara was a pastry chef at the Morning Roost, which meant her days started in the dark, early hours of the morning. She began her shift at 5:30 a.m., baking the day's sweets and breads, and was always done by the middle of the afternoon. This schedule brought her home to a house that was far too quiet, a silence that had never felt normal. Clara Forrester was a mother, or at least she used to be one. Her daughter, Olivia, had vanished 12 years ago. Olivia was just 8 years old, enjoying her summer vacation when she disappeared one ordinary morning. Clara had been in the kitchen making lunch when a sudden, cold realization hit her. She hadn't heard Olivia's cheerful laughter for more than an hour. She called her name, then searched the backyard, then the front yard, and then all the neighbors' properties. By the time the sun went down, the whole town had joined the desperate search for the little girl with the beaming smile and golden curls. The tragedy was too heavy a burden for Clara's marriage to carry. Her husband could not cope with the overwhelming grief. In his pain, he pointed a finger of blame at Clara, accusing her of not watching Olivia carefully enough, for being distracted in the kitchen when she should have been outside with their child. Just 6 months after Olivia vanished, he asked for a divorce and left for Seattle. He left Clara behind, alone with her crushing guilt and a home that was filled with nothing but memories. The familiar silence of her home greeted Clara as she stepped inside. After a long day, her routine was a quiet comfort. She set her box of baking tools on the kitchen counter and carefully hung her black and white checkered work apron over a chair. All she could think about was washing away the flour and fatigue with a hot shower. But just as she turned toward the stairs, the sharp ring of her phone cut through the quiet. Glancing at the screen, her breath hitched. A name she hadn't seen in years glowed back at her, Detective James Jones. He had been the one in charge when her daughter, Olivia, first disappeared. In those terrible early days, his daily calls were a lifeline. But as time dragged on with no answers, those calls became less frequent until they stopped altogether. For a long time now, any news came only because Clara herself would call the station, always bracing for the same disappointing reply: no new leads. Her heart began to pound as she answered, "Detective Jones." "Miss Forrester, good afternoon." His voice sounded deeper than she remembered, worn down by the years that had stretched between them. "Are you at home right now?" "Yes, I just walked in from work," she said, her own voice tight with worry. Is everything okay? There was a heavy pause on the other end of the line, a silence that made her stomach clench. Something has come up regarding Olivia's case. It's important. Would it be all right if I came by to speak with you in person? Clara's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. Of course, yes. Please come over. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The moment the call ended, a restless energy seized her. Clara began to pace her living room, nervously straightening stacks of magazines that were already neat and plumping couch cushions that didn't need it. Her mind was a whirlwind of terrifying questions. Had they found Olivia? Was it her remains? Had someone somewhere finally confessed? The not knowing was its own special kind of torture. She was already waiting by the front door when she saw the police car slide up to the curb. Detective Jones stepped out, and Clara was struck by how much older he looked. The dark hair she remembered was now streaked with gray, and he moved with the tired posture of a man who had carried the weight of too many unsolved mysteries. "Miss Forrester," he said with a brief nod as he reached her porch. "Please call me Clara," she replied. It was a small dance of politeness they had performed for over a decade. "Clara," he corrected himself gently. "Thank you for seeing me with no warning." "Of course, come in," she offered, moving to hold the door open for him. But he didn't move from the steps. "Actually," he said, his tone becoming more official, "I believe it would be better if you came with me. We've discovered something, a significant piece of evidence related to Olivia." Clara felt the air leave her lungs. "What is it?" "We found Olivia's bicycle," he stated, his expression grave. "The forensics team is currently examining the location where it was discovered. It would be very helpful if you could come to identify it and confirm it is hers." She didn't need a single second to think it over. Clara snatched her purse from the table in the hall, locked her front door, and followed the detective to his car without another word. As they drove through the streets of Cedarbrook Hollow, a strange sense of familiarity settled over her. They were traveling down Oakage Road, the very same route she used every day to get to the bakery. When Detective Jones turned into the driveway of a large house surrounded by cedar trees, a cold shiver traced its way down Clara's spine. "I pass this house every day," she whispered, the words escaping her more as a stunned realization than a statement meant for him. "I drive by this exact spot every single morning on my way to work." Detective Jones offered her a look of deep sympathy as he parked the car amidst the flurry of activity. "We'll figure this out, Clara," he said, his voice low and reassuring. The property was alive with motion. Police officers were everywhere, some taking photographs, others gathered in small, serious conversations. A bright line of yellow crime scene tape was stretched across the garage entrance, sealing off the area where a team dressed in white protective suits moved with careful precision. Detective Jones was guiding Clara toward the large garage when a man in a bright construction vest walked up to them. "Detective," the man said, "we've finished taking all the initial pictures of the object where it was found." "Thank you, Johnson," Detective Jones replied. He then turned to Clara. "Miss Forrester, this is Ryan Johnson. He's in charge of the renovation crew, and he's the one who made the discovery." The construction foreman gave Clara a respectful nod. "We were jackhammering the old floor to fix some pipes and modernize the whole space," Ryan Johnson explained. "That's when we found it. It was completely hidden under a solid layer of concrete." Clara followed the two men into the cool, dim garage. Her eyes were immediately drawn to a jagged hole in the far corner, where the gray floor had been torn apart. The pit was about 3 feet deep, and at the bottom, partly hidden by chunks of rubble and a fine layer of dust, was a small bicycle. It was painted pink, and even through the grime she could make out the white plastic basket fixed to its handlebars. A gasp caught in her throat. She didn't need a closer look. She knew. "That's hers," she whispered, the words barely more than a breath. "That's Olivia's bike." She felt an invisible force pull her toward the edge of the pit, her entire being focused on that rusted, broken object, something her little girl had held, had ridden, had adored. Time had not been kind to the bicycle. It was caked in dirt and corroded by rust. But to Clara, it was as recognizable as her own face. "Are you certain?" Detective Jones asked, his voice soft. Clara managed a slow nod, raising a trembling finger to point. "Those decorations," she said, her vision blurring. "See the streamers, the purple and pink ones. Olivia adored them. She would never let anyone take them off." Her voice cracked under the weight of the memory, and she pressed her hand to her mouth to hold back a sob. "It was put there on purpose," the foreman added, his tone serious. "This wasn't an accident, something that got covered during a build. Someone buried it deep because they didn't ever want it to be found." A terrifying thought, cold and sharp, pierced Clara's heart. "Was there?" she began, but the rest of the question stuck in her throat, choked off by a fear so powerful it stole her voice. Detective Jones understood the unspoken words. "There are no human remains, Clara," he said quickly and gently. "It's just the bicycle." A wave of overwhelming relief washed over her, so potent it made her knees feel weak. It was followed instantly by a fresh, sharp pain of grief, triggered by seeing a piece of her daughter's life after 12 long years. "Thank you for your help in identifying it," Detective Jones said. "Our forensic team will carefully remove the bicycle now. They will examine it for fingerprints and any other biological evidence, though after more than a decade buried in concrete, it's hard to say what might have survived." He then shifted gears. "Have you spoken to the people who own this place?" "We've reached out to the property's caretaker, a gentleman named Walter Mallory," the detective answered. "An officer was sent to bring him in for questioning about half an hour ago. We also have the details of the last guests who rented the house. They left yesterday and live up in Seattle. We'll be contacting them too." Clara's attention was pulled back to the little pink bike lying in its dark grave. It was the most real physical connection to Olivia she had encountered since her disappearance. Staring at it, a new feeling began to flicker deep inside her, something she hadn't felt in what seemed like a lifetime. It was a small, fragile spark of hope, cutting through the constant, numb emptiness of her loss. She couldn't bring herself to leave. Clara stood perfectly still, watching as the forensic team in their white protective suits began their delicate work. She took several pictures with her phone, careful to stay out of the way and not disturb the process. The officers were incredibly thorough, photographing the bicycle from every possible angle before they finally prepared to lift it from its concrete tomb. A woman on the forensic team noticed Clara's anxious, fixed gaze. She offered a kind, reassuring look. "We'll be extremely careful with it," she promised. "We know that every single detail matters." The quiet intensity of the investigation was broken by the crunch of tires on the driveway. Looking out from the garage, Clara watched as a police car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, guiding an older man toward the house. He looked to be in his late 50s, with thinning gray hair and a face lined by time. He walked with a slight hunch, his steps cautious, as if he wished to take up as little space as possible. Detective Jones followed Clara's gaze. "That's Walter Mallory, the man who looks after the property," he said. "Let's go see what he can tell us." They walked outside to meet the small group by the patrol car. Up close, Walter Mallory's face was a map of deep wrinkles, and his eyes moved restlessly, never settling for long on the detective or on Clara. "Mr. Mallory," Detective Jones began, "I'm Detective James Jones. I'm leading the investigation into the disappearance of Olivia Forrester. This is Clara Forrester, Olivia's mother." Walter gave a stiff nod, his eyes focused somewhere on the ground between them. "I heard something was found," he said, his voice tight. "The officers didn't give me any details, just said it was urgent that I come down here right away. We found a child's bicycle buried beneath the concrete floor of this garage," Detective Jones explained calmly. "It has been confirmed as belonging to Olivia Forrester, who vanished 12 years ago when she was 8 years old. Walter's eyes grew wide with shock. A bicycle, under the concrete. His voice lifted in pitch. I don't know a thing about that. I'm just the caretaker. I handle the guests and keep the property in order, that's all I do. I know the owner had the garage renovated, but that's it. How long have you held the caretaker position here? Detective Jones asked. About 10 years now, Walter replied. Ever since Mr. Holloway decided to start renting the house out. And who is Mr. Holloway? Walter shifted his weight uncomfortably from one foot to the other. Troy Holloway, he owns the place. He moved to Zurich, Switzerland, years ago. He comes back to visit once or twice a year, but otherwise he leaves everything in my hands. Detective Jones kept his gaze steady. When was the last time the garage floor was fixed or replaced? Not since I've been here, Walter answered quickly. The house was built 13 years ago. Mr. Holloway lived here himself for a little while before he moved to Europe. Clara observed the conversation silently, studying Walter's mannerisms. There was a clear jumpiness to him, a tension that went beyond normal nerves. He kept stealing anxious glances toward the garage, as if it held a terrible secret. The detective's tone became more firm. Mr. Mallory, I'll be straightforward. Right now, the primary people of interest in this case are those who have had ongoing access to this property. That means you and the owner. It would be very strange and very difficult for a temporary guest to bury something under a concrete floor. A flush of red spread across Walter's face. You think I had something to do with this? He sputtered. I would never, I could. I'm not a criminal, I'm a property manager. I don't know anything about a missing girl or her bicycle. We're going to need a complete list of every guest who has ever stayed here, one of the uniformed officers stated. Walter nodded eagerly. Yes, of course. I can get all of that for you. This is a popular rental. Some people have stayed for many months, even a year or two, especially with people working from home these days. I have all the records. Are you trying to say a long-term guest could have buried the bicycle? Detective Jones asked, his voice full of doubt. I'm not saying anything, Walter insisted, raising his hands in a defensive gesture. I'm just telling you that I don't know how it got there. Maybe it was buried before I ever started working here. The detective glanced at one of his officers, who took out a tablet and typed on the screen. After a moment, the officer looked up. County records show this property was built in 2010, approximately 1 year before Olivia Forrester disappeared in 2011. Well, there you are, Walter said, a note of relief in his voice. It must have been put there during the original construction, before the concrete was ever poured. I wasn't even working for Mr. Holloway back then. Detective Jones's expression didn't change. We will need to speak with Mr. Holloway immediately. In the meantime, Mr. Mallory, please do not leave town. Make sure you are available for more questions. Of course, Detective, Walter agreed, nodding vigorously. Anything I can do to help, I'll give you whatever you need. Clara watched as Detective Jones instructed his team to work with international authorities to reach Troy Holloway in Switzerland. The entire property would be scoured for clues, and every single past guest would be tracked down and interviewed. The detective then turned to Clara. We've informed the local news stations about the discovery. They'll likely be arriving soon. Would you like to speak to them? Clara shook her head. No, I can't, not right now. It's all too much. I understand completely, he assured her. An officer will drive you home. We will call you with any news we find. As an officer led her to a patrol car, Clara saw the first news vans pulling up to the property, reporters already preparing their cameras. The image of Olivia's rusted bicycle had stirred a powerful feeling inside her, a raw, desperate hope that had slept for 12 long years. But with that hope also came a deep fear, the terrifying thought of having her heart shattered all over again. During the drive home, Clara looked out the window at the passing streets of Cedarbrook Hollow, and everything looked different. Somewhere in this town, there were answers about what happened to her daughter, and for the first time in over a decade, she truly believed they might finally be found. The quiet of her own home felt strange after the chaos of the day. Clara gave a final, grateful nod to the police officer who had seen her safely inside before heading straight for her bedroom. Her thoughts were a tangled mess, replaying the image of the little pink bike being lifted from its concrete tomb, the tense conversation with Walter Mallory, and the sudden, fierce energy of the revived investigation. Needing comfort, she swapped her work clothes for a soft pair of sweatpants and a well-worn sweatshirt from her university days. She walked quietly into her home office, a room that held a different kind of memory. Long ago, it had been Olivia's bedroom, but the pain of walking past that closed door every day, knowing her daughter's untouched world was waiting inside, had become too much. Clara had finally converted it, painting the bright yellow walls a calm, neutral beige. She couldn't bring herself to erase Olivia completely, though. A few of her daughter's cherished drawings still hung in simple frames on the wall. Sitting at her desk, Clara opened her laptop and logged into the online forum that had been her sanctuary for over 10 years, the Missing Children's Support Community. This group was her lifeline, a place where other parents truly understood a loss that never ended. Her fingers shook a little as she began to type a new post. She told them everything. She wrote about the discovery of Olivia's bicycle after 12 long years, buried under concrete in a garage at a local rental house, a house she drove past every single day. She explained that the investigation was active again and confessed to feeling completely overwhelmed. But she also shared a fragile spark of hope, calling it the breakthrough they had all been waiting for. She attached a photo of the bike in the muddy hole and pressed post. Almost instantly, kind responses began to flood in. Messages of support and shared hope popped up on her screen, a digital embrace from people who cared. Then, a notification alerted her to a new private message. Assuming it was a forum friend checking in, she clicked on it. What she saw made the air leave her lungs in a horrified gasp. It was a picture she knew well, one she had shared herself years ago. It showed Olivia, beaming with joy, riding her pink bicycle in front of their home. But this image had been twisted into something monstrous. Her daughter's smiling face had been cut out and replaced with the gruesome, crudely photoshopped head of a dead pig. "Oh my God," Clara whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Below the vile picture was a short video. Her hands trembling violently, she hit play and instantly knew it was a mistake. The grainy, dark footage showed a person chopping at what looked like a pig's head before wrapping the pieces in clear plastic wrap. It was chilling and sickening. Above it all was a message written in cruel, simple words. "Your daughter's as dead as this pig. Just accept it and live with it." A wave of nausea hit her so hard she stumbled backward. She slammed the laptop shut and ran to the bathroom, barely reaching the toilet before she was violently sick. She stayed there, slumped against the cool wall, shaking uncontrollably until the worst of the shock passed. Steeling her nerves, she made herself return to the computer. This was evidence. She needed to save it and send it to Detective Jones. Taking a deep breath, she opened the laptop again and took screenshots of everything, the message, the altered photo, and the video. Then a surge of anger cut through her fear. She typed a reply, her fingers striking the keys with force. "Who are you?" she wrote. "If you're man enough to send this filth, you should be man enough to reveal yourself. Who would do something so cruel to a mother who has suffered for 12 years? She clicked on the sender's profile, desperate for any clue, but it was a ghost account. It was set to private and showed no information, no followers, likely created just to send this one hateful message. Packing the room, she tried to calm her racing heart. After a few minutes, she forced herself to look at the video again, this time not as a horrified mother but as an investigator. She paused it over and over, studying every blurred detail in the background. There wasn't much, just a rough wooden surface like a butcher's block, set outdoors. In one fleeting frame, she caught a glimpse through a window of what looked like a pine tree of some kind. She quickly forwarded everything to Detective Jones, And then, feeling the need for her community's strength, she posted about the attack on the forum, asking if anyone could spot details she had missed. Her phone rang almost immediately. It was Detective Jones. "I just saw what you sent me," he said, skipping any greeting. "When did this come in?" "Just now," Clara replied, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "I posted my update about the bike, and this message arrived almost immediately. Our tech team is already on it, analyzing the video and trying to trace the account," he assured her. "One thing I noticed right away, the trees in that video, the ones in the background, they look like European alpine evergreens. They're not the type that grows around here." "Do you think it could be the property owner?" Clara asked. "He lives in Switzerland, right?" "It's a possibility we can't ignore," Detective Jones admitted. "The timing is suspicious. We spoke to Walter Mallory today, and he may have contacted the owner. But it could also be someone completely unrelated, just a cruel troll who saw the news and decided to attack." "Have you found anything else at the house?" Clara asked, almost afraid of the answer. "We've done a full search of the property," he replied. "There are no signs of human remains or any other evidence related to Olivia's case, which is a good thing. We're still processing the scene, but for now, the bicycle is our only solid lead." "What about the past guests? Have you reached any of them?" "It's a slow process," he said. "With years of rental history to go through, it will take time. We're focusing on long-term stays and anyone who was there around the time Olivia disappeared." He paused, and his next words were gentle but firm. "Clara, our forensics team finished their first look at the bicycle. As we expected, they found no usable fingerprints or DNA. It was buried too long. The concrete and moisture destroyed any biological evidence." Clara closed her eyes, fighting a wave of disappointment. "So, we're back to the beginning." "Not at all," Detective Jones said firmly. "Finding that bike is a huge breakthrough. It tells us without a doubt that whoever was involved with Olivia's disappearance had access to that property. It significantly narrows our focus." After the call ended, Clara returned to her computer. Her forum post was now filled with dozens of replies. Members were offering their analysis and unwavering support. Some agreed with Detective Jones about the European trees, while others pointed out odd details in the video that suggested it might have been faked or even created by artificial intelligence. For the next few hours, Clara lost herself in reading and responding to the comments. The distraction was a gift, and the collective wisdom of the community made her feel stronger, more prepared to face whatever came next. But underneath that strength, a deep and cold dread remained. Someone out there wanted her to stop searching for Olivia. Someone wanted her to give up and accept that her daughter was dead. And that someone, she feared, might have been watching her for a very long time, waiting for the perfect moment to snuff out her hope just as it began to flicker back to life. The hours after the shocking message slipped by in a haze. Clara remained glued to the online forum, where a community of strangers had become her unexpected allies. They pored over the gruesome video and the altered photo, their comments forming a lifeline of both technical expertise and human kindness. Some members who worked with digital media pointed out flaws in the footage. The lighting seemed to jump between frames, and the edges of the pig's head showed signs of computer tampering. One person, claiming to work in video authentication, was certain it was a fake, a mix of real butchering footage and artificial elements designed to look like it happened in a specific place. Clara held onto these explanations like a shield. It was easier to think about pixels and software than the video's awful content or what it might say about what happened to Olivia. It was only when she noticed the deep silence of her house that she checked the time. The clock on her screen read nearly midnight. She logged off, promising the group she would share any news, and finally turned her computer off. Though her body was tired, her mind was a whirlwind of questions and fears. Sleep felt impossible. She mechanically went through her nightly routine, washing her face, brushing her teeth, pulling on her pajamas, But once in bed, she could only stare at the shadows dancing on her ceiling. Every piece of the puzzle spun through her head. The bike encased in concrete, the twisted photo, the video, Walter's skittish behavior, the distant property owner. It was too much to be a simple coincidence. The digital clock on her nightstand ticked away the slowest hours of her life. 1:17 a.m., 2:42 a.m., 3:28 a.m. By 4 in the morning she surrendered. "This is ridiculous," she whispered into the dark, clicking on her lamp. If she couldn't sleep, she could at least be useful. She dressed in black jeans and a soft green sweater, collected her kit of pastry tools, her chef's uniform, and her purse. It was extremely early, even for her, but Marge, the owner of the Morning Roost, had given Clara her own key years ago. Marge trusted her completely with the bakery she had spent 30 years building. "The ovens don't care what time it is," Marge always said. "And neither do I, as long as the pastries are good." For Clara, the bakery was more than a job. It was her safe haven. In the years since Olivia vanished, the methodical process of baking, the exact measurements, the physical act of kneading dough, the simple alchemy of turning flour and butter into something wonderful, had become a form of therapy. It was a place where she could create something good and tangible, a small comfort for others when she had failed to provide the ultimate safety for her own daughter. She loaded her things into the car and backed out of the driveway. The streets of Cedarbrook Hollow were empty and quiet at this hour, the world still asleep under a sky just beginning to soften with the first hint of dawn. She drove slowly, her thoughts still churning. Maybe by the time her shift ended, Detective Jones would have news. Maybe they would have discovered who sent that cruel message or found a new clue on the bicycle. She followed the familiar route toward town, automatically easing off the accelerator as she neared the curve where the Airbnb house stood. Then something made her pause. A light was on in one of the windows. Clara's brow furrowed. Detective Jones had been very clear. The property was an active crime scene and was supposed to be completely off-limits. As she watched, the light suddenly blinked out, leaving the house in total darkness. "That's odd," she said to herself. "A police guard might be posted, but why would they be turning lights on and off at 4 in the morning?" Acting on a powerful instinct, she turned her car onto the private road leading to the house. She drove carefully, her headlights cutting a path through the gloom. As she got closer, she saw a white van parked near the side of the house. It was definitely not a police car. She parked a short distance away and killed the engine. She considered calling Detective Jones right then, but decided she needed to see what was happening first. She didn't want to disturb him over nothing. She stepped out into the cool, damp air, closing her car door as quietly as she could. Staying close to the tree line for cover, she moved toward the house. Near the front of the property, a figure was walking quickly from the house toward the van. Even in the poor light, Clara recognized the stooped posture and nervous walk. It was Walter Mallory. He was carrying something, though she was too far away to see what it was. He placed it in the van and turned back toward the house, then suddenly froze when he heard the crunch of Clara's footsteps on the gravel. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice sharp with fear. Clara paused, then stepped into the open. Hiding was pointless now. "It's Clara Forrester," she said, walking toward him. "Olivia's mother." His face was hard to see in the dark, but his body was screaming with tension. His shoulders were tight, and he took a small step backward, closer to his van. "What are you doing here at this hour?" he asked, his voice strained. "I could ask you the same thing," Clara replied, stopping a few yards away. "I thought this place was sealed for the investigation. I saw a light on." Walter shifted his weight uncomfortably from one foot to the other. "Mr. Troy Holloway asked me to get some important documents from inside. Insurance papers and property records that the police need. He got permission for me to collect them." Clara watched him closely, noticing how his eyes wouldn't meet hers, darting everywhere but her face. "At 4 in the morning. Mr. Holloway is in Switzerland. It's the middle of the morning there for him," Walter said, his words coming out in a rushed jumble. He called as soon as he woke up and heard what was going on. He said the police needed these papers immediately. It sounded reasonable, but everything about his demeanor felt wrong. He was too jumpy, too eager to explain himself. "I'm just following orders," he continued, moving toward the driver's side door of his van. "I have to take these to the police station now. You really shouldn't be here, Miss Forrester. This is a crime scene." Clara nodded slowly. "I'm going the other way anyway," she said, gesturing back toward the main road. "I'm on my way to work." Walter gave a short, quick nod and climbed into his van. Clara walked back to her car, listening as his engine started up behind her. She waited until he had pulled away and disappeared down the road before she got into her own vehicle. The moment she was inside, she grabbed her phone and called Detective Jones. He answered on the third ring, his voice clear and awake despite the early hour. "Clara, is everything all right?" "I'm not sure," she said, quickly explaining what she had just seen. "He said he had permission to be there, that he was getting documents for the owner." "That is absolutely not true," Detective Jones stated, his tone turning serious. "No one has permission to be on that property right now, and certainly not in the middle of the night. Whatever Walter was doing, it wasn't authorized by us." A cold dread washed over Clara. Should I follow him? He just left a few minutes ago. "Absolutely not," the detective commanded immediately. "He could be dangerous, especially if he thinks he's been caught. Stay right where you are. I'm sending officers to your location, and I'll have others look for his van." "I'm not at the house anymore," Clara explained. "I'm in my car on the main road. He went west on Cedar Ridge Road." "Stay where you are, Clara, or go back home. Let us handle this. We'll find him." Clara agreed and ended the call. She sat in her idling car, her heart pounding. What had Walter really been doing? What was so important that he had to sneak in and remove it in the dead of night? The answer struck her with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't retrieving documents. He was destroying evidence. He was removing something that connected him to Olivia's disappearance, something he couldn't let the police find. Her hands clenched the steering wheel. She had promised Detective Jones she wouldn't follow, but the part of her that was a mother, the part that had spent 12 years searching, aching, and refusing to give up, could not just drive away. Not when the truth felt so close she could almost touch it. She put her car in drive and turned onto Cedar Ridge Road, heading west, the same direction Walter had gone. She would keep her distance, she told herself. She wouldn't approach him. She would only see where he was going. After all, this road also led to the morning roost. The world was still cloaked in a deep, pre-dawn blackness as Clara guided her car along the winding path of Cedar Ridge Road. Her eyes, tired but determined, remained fixed on the empty stretch of pavement ahead, searching for a glimpse of a white van. The forest here was a dark, dense wall on either side, broken only occasionally by a lonely mailbox or a driveway leading to an unseen home. With so few streetlights, her own headlights carved out the only pool of light in the overwhelming gloom, illuminating the twists and turns of the road. She wasn't trying to race after Walter. In fact, she wanted to stay far enough behind him to remain invisible. Her only mission was to learn his destination and understand what he was doing with whatever he had taken from the house. A quick check of her GPS screen confirmed she was heading in the right direction. The map showed that Cedar Ridge Road, for all its curves through the wooded landscape, was a direct route that would eventually meet Hillside Avenue, which led back into town near the morning roost. This small piece of knowledge was a comfort. Her desperate detour wouldn't make her late for work. She still had time. After about 10 minutes of seeing no one, a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. Had she missed him? Could he have turned down some hidden path she hadn't noticed? Just as she began to think about turning back, her headlights caught a shape on the shoulder ahead, a white van, partially tucked into the trees. Clara's heart jumped. She immediately slowed her car, pulling over much farther back and killing her headlights so she wouldn't be seen. In the slowly gathering light of the new day, she could just make out the van's outline. Unsure of what to do next, she quietly rolled down her window, hoping the morning air would carry some clue. A strange, acrid smell drifted in, a harsh chemical smoke, nothing like the comforting scent of a wood fire. Peering through the trees, she saw thin, dark tendrils of smoke rising from a spot in the forest near where Walter had parked. He was burning something. Her first thought was to call Detective Jones, but what would she say? That a man was legally burning trash in the woods. It wasn't exactly a crime, and by the time the police could arrive, Walter would surely be gone. As she wrestled with this decision, she saw movement by the van. Walter emerged from the tree line, carrying a metal burn barrel, the kind used for containing fires. He loaded it into the back of his van with rushed, nervous movements, his head constantly swiveling as he checked to see if anyone was watching. Clara slid down in her seat, holding her breath until he was finished. Once the barrel was secured, Walter climbed into the driver's seat, started his engine, and pulled back onto the road, continuing west. Clara waited until his taillights vanished around a curve before she started her car and followed, this time allowing for more distance between them. She tried calling Detective Jones again, but the signal out here was terrible. Her phone showed only a single bar. The detective's voice crackled and broke up through the static. "Clara, hear you. Where?" "Walter stopped in the woods," Clara said, speaking loudly into the phone. "He was burning something in a barrel. Now he's driving west on Cedar Ridge Road again." "Don't follow. Dangerous." The detective's fragmented reply came through. "Police coming." "I can't hear you clearly," Clara replied, her frustration growing. "I'll try to call again when I have a better signal." She ended the call, more determined than ever not to lose sight of the van. Whatever Walter was up to, his secretive, early morning actions felt deeply suspicious, and with Olivia's bike just having been found, Clara's heart told her it was all connected. She continued to follow for several more miles until she saw the van's brake lights flare up ahead. Walter signaled and turned onto a narrow side road that was so easy to miss. Clara would have driven right past it if she hadn't been paying close attention. She drove past the turnoff, pulled over out of sight, and checked her GPS. The side road was called Whispering Pines Lane, a small cul-de-sac with just a few homes spaced far apart. This had to be where he lived. After waiting a few minutes, Clara cautiously turned her car around and crept onto the narrow lane. She kept her headlights dim and her speed low to avoid making any noise. Thick trees pressed in on both sides, offering her plenty of cover. After about a quarter of a mile, the woods opened up into a small clearing with several houses. Clara parked at the very edge of the tree line, where her car would be harder to spot, and used her phone's camera to zoom in on the scene. Walter's van was parked in front of a modest, one-story house with faded blue siding. She watched as he unloaded the burn barrel from the van and carried it along the side of the house, vanishing from view. When he returned, he was pushing a red cart, a fire trolley like the ones used in warehouses to move heavy loads. He parked it by his open van door and, with obvious effort, lifted something heavy from the trolley into the vehicle. Then he wheeled the empty cart back into the house. Clara checked her phone again, but the signal was still weak. She tried calling Detective Jones anyway. "Detective, I'm on Whispering Pines Lane," she said, speaking as clearly as she could. "Walter lives here. He brought the burn barrel to his house, and now he has some kind of red trolley. I think he's moving something heavy." This time his voice came through more clearly, and it was firm. "Clara, listen to me. This is extremely dangerous. I need you to leave that area immediately. Our officers are on their way, but it will take them time to get there. Do not approach Walter or his property." "I won't," Clara promised. "I'm staying in my car, well hidden." "I understand," Detective Jones said, his tone softening just a little. "But your safety is the most important thing. Please start driving back toward town now. We'll handle Walter." Clara hesitated, torn between her burning curiosity and the cold voice of reason. "All right," she said finally. "I'm leaving now." But as she reached for the ignition, Walter came out of his house again, pushing the fire trolley toward his van for what she now realized was the third time. She watched, frozen, as he repeated his labored routine, straining to lift another heavy, unseen object from the trolley into the van. After he was done, he loaded the trolley itself into the back and finally shut the van's doors. Her phone was forgotten in her hand, all thoughts of leaving gone as she watched Walter walk to the driver's side door and climb in. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs as she checked her phone for what felt like the 100th time, relieved to see the signal was still holding. She pressed the phone to her ear, her voice a hushed whisper, even though a wide stretch of land separated her from Walter's home. "Detective Jones. He's loading things from the house into his van," she reported the second he picked up, her eyes glued to the scene. "He's using a fire trolley. This isn't his first trip, he just went back inside to get more." On the other end, Detective Jones's voice was tight with urgency. "Where are you right now, Clara?" "I'm still on Whispering Pines Lane, parked where the trees begin. I'm far enough away that he can't see me, but Detective, he's getting into the van now," she said, her words coming faster. "I think he's leaving." "Our units are still a few minutes away," Jones responded, the frustration clear in his tone. "Without being seen, can you tell which way he goes?" "Yes, this is a dead end. There's only one way out, and he has to drive right past me to get to it." Clara's breath caught in her throat as the van's engine rumbled to life. She slid down in her driver's seat, making herself as small as possible as the vehicle drew closer. "He's turning toward Cedar Ridge Road," she whispered into the phone. The moment the van passed and disappeared around the bend, the quiet evening was split by the sudden, silent flash of blue and red lights. Multiple police cruisers, their sirens off to keep their approach a secret, raced past her and into the cul-de-sac. The lead car slowed near the intersection, and Clara saw Detective Jones inside, speaking intently into his radio. The other cars sped past him, clearly chasing after Walter. Her hands trembling, Clara started her car and pulled onto the road, following the commotion from a safe distance. As she rounded a curve, the scene unfolded before her. The police had created a solid roadblock, their cars positioned to completely trap Walter's van, leaving him with no escape. Clara parked well back and watched, her pulse roaring in her ears. Officers moved toward the van with their weapons drawn, their commands sharp and clear in the night air. They ordered Walter to get out and show his hands. Slowly he complied, stepping out of the vehicle. His face was a blank slate of defeat. Once he was in handcuffs and secured by two officers, Detective Jones moved in. Other police officers went to the back of the van. Using gloved hands, they pulled the doors open. From where she was, Clara couldn't see what was inside, but the officers' reactions said everything. Their postures shifted from alertness to shock, and then to a flurry of purposeful movement. Detective Jones spoke quickly into his radio, and within moments an ambulance arrived, its lights painting the surrounding trees in streaks of white and red. Clara could no longer stay back. She got out of her car and walked toward the activity. A uniformed officer moved to stop her, but Detective Jones saw her and gestured for her to come forward. "What is it?" Clara asked, her voice unsteady. "What did you find?" The detective's face was deeply serious. "You need to brace yourself for this, Clara. It's difficult." He guided her to the rear of the van where officers were carefully lifting out 3 long black body bags. Each one held the clear shape of a person. Clara felt the world tilt, but Jones spoke quickly. "They're alive," he said, seeing the terror on her face. "All 3 of them. They're breathing, but they've been heavily sedated." Clara stared, her mind refusing to make sense of the sight. Her greatest fear and her greatest hope collided. Is Olivia in there?" she managed to whisper. Before the detective could answer, a paramedic gently unzipped the first bag. Inside was a young woman with pale blonde hair. Her features were those of a woman, not the little girl from Clara's memories, but there was absolutely no doubt. It was her daughter. "Olivia," Clara breathed out. Her legs suddenly felt like water, threatening to buckle beneath her. Detective Jones quickly grabbed her arm, holding her steady. "We need to transport them now," a paramedic called out. "They're stable but under deep sedation." In a daze, Clara watched as the medical team worked with gentle efficiency, moving the three young women from the body bags to stretchers and into the ambulance. Olivia was alive, and two others were alive with her. Across the road, Walter stood handcuffed between two officers. When his eyes met Clara's, his resigned expression twisted into pure rage. "You should have accepted it," he screamed at her, his voice raw with hatred. "She was dead to me, and she would have been dead to you too if you had just left it alone." A surge of anger, hot and fierce, rushed through Clara's veins. She took a step toward him. "How could you?" she demanded, her voice shaking with the weight of 12 years of pain. "How could you take my child from me?" Walter spat on the ground, his eyes burning. "You should have just learned to live with it." "That's enough," Detective Jones cut in sharply, signaling the officers to remove him. They led the furious man to a waiting cruiser and pushed him into the back seat. A cold realization washed over Clara. "I know that line," she said, her voice trembling. "It's the same message I got online. Your daughter's as dead as this pig. Just accept it and live with it." It was him. He was the one who sent me that horrible video. "We'll add it to the charges," Detective Jones assured her. "But right now, the most important thing is getting these women to the hospital. Clara, would you like to ride in the ambulance with Olivia?" Wordlessly, her throat too tight to speak, Clara nodded. After 12 long years of searching, of hopping, of refusing to let go, her daughter was coming home. She was changed, she was grown, and she had lived through nightmares Clara could scarcely imagine, but she was alive. Clara climbed into the ambulance and sat beside Olivia's stretcher. Gently, she took her daughter's hand. It was so much larger than the small, sticky hand she remembered holding. The fingers were longer, the nails neat but plain. This was not the hand of her 8-year-old girl who had ridden away on a pink bicycle. This was the hand of a survivor. "I'm here, Olivia," Clara whispered, giving her hand a soft squeeze. "I never stopped looking for you. I never ever gave up." As the ambulance doors closed and they began to move, Clara held on tightly, making a silent promise that she would never have to let go again. The first light of dawn over Cedarbrook Hollow was broken by the urgent wail of a siren. Inside the speeding ambulance, Clara Forrester held tightly to her daughter's hand, her eyes tracing every feature of Olivia's face. The round cheeks of the 9-year-old girl she remembered had been replaced by the defined lines of a young woman of 20. In the quiet of unconsciousness, Olivia's expression was peaceful, her breathing deep and steady. A paramedic had told Clara her vital signs were strong, but the true extent of her condition would only be known at the hospital. "When will she wake up?" Clara asked, her voice thin with worry. The paramedic kept his focus on his monitors. "It's difficult to know for sure without knowing what she was given," he explained. "But judging by how she's responding, I'd guess the drugs will wear off in a few hours." When they arrived at Cedarbrook Memorial Hospital, the emergency doors flew open to reveal a prepared team of medical staff. Olivia's stretcher was swiftly guided inside, with Clara following just a step behind. Her world narrowed to the sight of her daughter being wheeled away. "Trauma Room 2, a doctor in blue scrubs directed, adding, "The other two young women are in 1 and 3. Clara waited outside, a silent statue of anxiety, until a nurse gently touched her arm. "Miss Forrester, the police would like a word." In a small, private waiting area, Detective Jones was waiting for her. "How is she?" he asked as Clara sank into a chair. "Stable," she replied, her thoughts still with Olivia, "still unconscious. They're with her now." Detective Jones gave a firm nod. "We have officers stationed at each of their rooms. They're safe now." "Have you identified the others?" Clara asked. "We're fairly certain," he said. Evidence from Walter Mallory's house, along with old missing person reports, points to Jasmine Bennett, missing from Portland 11 years ago, and Isabella Ramirez, who disappeared from a school trip in Seattle 13 years ago. Both were 9. Clara closed her eyes, her heart aching for the other mothers who were about to have their worlds remade, just as hers had been when a rusted bicycle was pulled from the lake. And Walter, has he said anything? Nothing beyond what he yelled at the scene. He's asked for a lawyer, Detective Jones said. But his house tells its own story. Journals, photographs, records, he documented their lives. It seems he saw himself not as a captor but as their caretaker in some twisted fantasy. But how did he hide them? Clara pressed, unable to comprehend it. Did no one ever come to his house? The house has a storm bunker beneath it, the detective explained. He converted it into a soundproof living space. From what we can tell, that's where they spent most of their time, especially if he had visitors, which was rare. The man was a recluse. A cold dread washed over Clara as she pictured her daughter, living a hidden life underground. We also found his laptop, Detective Jones continued. Our tech team confirmed he was the one who sent you that altered photo and video. He created a new account just to do it. The European background in the video was fake, created with technology to make it look real. To point the blame at Mr. Holloway, Clara realized. Exactly. We've spoken with Swiss authorities. Mr. Holloway admits to ordering the renovation but denies any knowledge of this. We'll keep looking into it, of course. Just then, a doctor entered the room. Miss Forrester, I'm Dr. Ellison. I've finished my initial examination of your daughter. Clara stood quickly. How is she? Is she awake? Not yet, but she's beginning to come out of the sedation, Dr. Ellison said. Physically, she's in remarkably good shape given the circumstances. She is undernourished, but not severely. We found some old, healed fractures in her left arm and right ankle, but no signs of recent physical trauma. Clara forced herself to ask the question that had haunted her for 12 years. What about sexual abuse? Dr. Ellison's expression remained professional but softened. We found no evidence of sexual assault or abuse. From what all 3 women have indicated, Walter Mallory enforced what he called a fatherly relationship. It was controlling and psychologically abusive, but it was not sexual in nature. The wave of relief that washed over Clara was so powerful it left her weak. The psychological scars would take a long time to heal, but knowing Olivia had been spared that particular horror felt like a miracle. When can I see her? Clara asked. You can go in now. We've moved her to a private room. It might help her to sense a familiar presence when she starts to wake up, Dr. Ellison said. Clara turned to the detective. I need to be with her. Of course, Detective Jones said. We'll need statements from all of them when they're ready, but that can wait. Clara followed the doctor to a room guarded by a uniformed officer. Inside, Olivia lay in a hospital bed, surrounded by the gentle beeps and glow of medical monitors. Her breathing seemed lighter now, more natural. Clara pulled a chair close and took her daughter's hand. I'm here, sweetheart, she whispered. You're safe now. For nearly an hour, Clara kept her vigil, speaking soft words or simply watching Olivia breathe. Then, around 8 in the morning, she saw Olivia's eyelids begin to flutter. Olivia, Clara leaned in close. Can you hear me? Olivia's eyes opened slowly, her gaze blurry and unfocused before it gradually cleared and settled on Clara. There was a moment of confusion, and then a flicker of recognition. Mom, her voice was a dry, raspy whisper. Tears welled in Clara's eyes. Yes, sweetheart, it's me. As full awareness returned, Olivia's eyes grew wide with alarm. Where am I? Where, Walter? You're in the hospital, Clara assured her, her voice firm and calm. Walter has been arrested. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe now. Olivia stared as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I thought I'd never see you again. I never stopped looking for you, Clara said, her tears finally spilling over. I never stopped hopping. A nurse came in to check Olivia's vitals and left to get the doctor. Dr. Ellison returned moments later with Detective Jones. "Hello, Olivia. I'm Dr. Ellison. How are you feeling?" the doctor asked gently. "Dizzy," Olivia replied. "Tired but okay." "That's to be expected. The medication is still leaving your system. We'll take good care of you," Dr. Ellison said. Detective Jones stepped forward. "Olivia, I'm Detective Jones. I know this is a lot, but when you feel able, we need to ask you some questions." Olivia nodded slowly. "The other girls, Jasmine and Jules, are they here? Are they okay?" "They're both here and they're both safe," the detective assured her. "They're still asleep, but the doctors say they'll be fine just like you." Some of the tension seemed to leave Olivia's body. "Good. I promised I'd keep them safe." Clara squeezed her hand. "You did, sweetheart. You all kept each other safe, and now you're home." Dr. Ellison gently intervened. "Olivia needs her rest, but if she feels up to a few questions first, it would be very helpful." "I want to help," Olivia said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. "I want him to stay locked up forever." "Can you tell us how Walter took you?" Detective Jones asked, notebook in hand. Olivia's gaze turned inward, traveling back to a day 12 years past. "I was riding my bike around our house. It was summer. Mom was inside making lunch." She glanced at Clara, a silent apology in her eyes. "Walter drove by in his truck. He stopped and offered me a candy bar. Then he asked if I wanted to see his cat's new kittens." Clara closed her eyes, the common, cruel trickery of it feeling like a physical blow. "I said no at first," Olivia continued, "but he said the kittens were in a garage nearby and that I could bring my bike. I really wanted to see them." Her voice cracked under the weight of the memory. "There weren't any kittens. When we got to the empty house, I guess it was the airman before it was finished, he gave me a drink. It tasted funny, but I was thirsty. Then I got so sleepy." Detective Jones made a note. "And then he took you to his house." "Yes, to the bunker underneath. That's where I met Jasmine. Jules came later." Olivia's voice hardened. "He told us there was a war outside, that our parents were dead, and that he was protecting us. But we figured out he was lying. We saw newspapers sometimes when he was careless. We knew there was no war." Clara listened, her horror mixed with a fierce pride at the clear, coherent strength of her daughter's mind. "Did he ever tell you why he took you?" Detective Jones asked. Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "He said he was saving us from bad parents, that they didn't watch us closely enough and didn't deserve us." She looked directly at Clara, her expression filled with a love that had never faded. "I knew that wasn't true about you, Mom. I knew you loved me." Detective Jones sat with them during one of his many visits, his voice a low, steady presence in the quiet hospital room. He explained that they had been carefully reading Walter's personal journals, and the picture they painted was a deeply troubling one. The man had constructed a twisted world in his own mind, convincing himself he was a savior. He wrote that he was rescuing young girls from families he had judged to be neglectful. Regarding Olivia, his notes claimed he had watched her playing by herself in the front yard on multiple occasions before he made his move. The memory, sharp and painful, returned to Clara in a wave. "I was right there in the kitchen," she had told the detective, the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on her. "The window looked out onto the yard. I only turned my back for a few minutes, just to check on dinner in the oven." "Clara," Detective Jones had said, his voice leaving no room for argument, "you cannot blame yourself for this. Men like Walter spend their lives searching for any small opening, any tiny slice of everyday life they can twist to their advantage. There was no possible way for you to know what was coming. You are not at fault." He continued, his expression growing even more serious. The investigation had uncovered more than just the journals. On Walter's computer, they had found proof of a horrifying plan. As the 3 women he held had grown older, he was preparing to move them. The detective revealed that Walter had connections to an international trafficking network that operated in the hidden corners of the dark web. He was on the verge of selling them. A shocked gasp escaped Clara's lips and her hand flew to her mouth. Beside her, Olivia's hand squeezed her own tightly, their fingers laced together. Detective Jones explained that Walter was becoming anxious. The women were adults now, harder to manage, more likely to fight back or attempt an escape. His journals stated he intended to drug them and move them within the week. He looked directly at Clara. If she had not seen him at the Airbnb that night and chosen to follow him. He didn't have to finish the thought. The unspoken truth hung heavily in the air. If Clara hadn't been restless that night, if she hadn't decided to leave for work early, if her eyes hadn't caught the faint glow of a light in that vacant house, and she hadn't gone to investigate, Olivia and the others might have vanished without a trace, likely for good. Detective Jones gave a grim nod. I know this is difficult to hear, Olivia, but you are safe now, and the information you are giving us is crucial. It is helping us tear apart this entire criminal operation. You are helping to save other girls from this fate. At his words, Olivia straightened up against her pillows. A new strength seemed to fill her, and her jaw set with a fierce determination that took Clara's breath away. It was the very same look her stubborn 8-year-old daughter had worn so long ago. Good, Olivia said, her voice clear and firm. I want to help. I want to do everything I can to make sure no one else has to live through what we did. A powerful surge of pride washed over Clara. After everything she had suffered, her daughter's spirit remained not only unbroken, but filled with compassion and courage. There is one last thing, Detective Jones added. We've confirmed, through Walter's own records and a statement from Mr. Holloway, that Walter was involved in building the Airbnb property long before he became its caretaker. He knew Mr. Holloway from an old job and helped design the house. He was on site during construction and had full access before the garage floor was ever poured with concrete. So he buried the bike there himself, Clara concluded, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place, to hide the evidence. Exactly, the detective confirmed. And it appears Mr. Holloway knew nothing about Walter's secret life. He is cooperating completely with our investigation, both here and with the authorities in Switzerland. After asking a few more gentle questions, Detective Jones took his leave when Dr. Ellison gently reminded them that Olivia needed her rest. He thanked Olivia and promised to return soon. Once they were alone, Clara gently brushed the hair from her daughter's forehead. Get some sleep, sweetheart. I'll be right here when you wake up, I promise. Olivia's eyes were already fluttering closed, the medicine in her system pulling her back towards sleep. Don't leave, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Never again, Clara vowed, settling deeply into the chair beside the bed. I'm not going anywhere. As Olivia drifted into a peaceful sleep, Clara watched her daughter's face, still marveling at the incredible miracle of her return. She knew difficult days lay ahead. There would be a long journey of healing, the challenge of adjusting to a world that had moved on without her for 12 years, and the daunting legal process against Walter. But they would not face any of it alone. They would face it together. After a dozen years of living in the deepest darkness, a brilliant light had finally returned to Clara's world. In the end, it wasn't just a child's buried bicycle that had brought Olivia home. It was a mother's unwavering love that refused to die, a detective's stubborn commitment to justice, a young woman's incredible strength to endure, and a chain of seemingly small choices that led a mother to drive down a specific street at the perfect moment on a life-changing morning. Some people might call it luck or a simple coincidence, but Clara preferred to believe it was something more. She felt it was the universe, after 12 long years, finally correcting a terrible mistake and restoring the balance that had been so tragically broken. Whatever force had guided them, Clara was thankful for all of it, for every single moment, every hurdle they would overcome, and every joy that would come from having her daughter home. After 12 years of darkness, they had found their way back to the light, and they had found it together.